at this. Hi, I'm Andy Richter, and I'm here to talk to you about implicit bias. If you watched that clip and assumed the owner of the curling iron would be a girl, then you just showed implicit bias. Something to think about. Okay, I think we got it. Let's give it up for my camera operator, Sam. Hi, me again. If you assume my camera operator, Sam, was a man, you've once again shown implicit bias. Check your bias. Okay, guys, we're really done now. I have to take my car to the mechanic. Yes! My mechanic is a woman! Damn it, people! This is exhausting. I'm spending the rest of my day fighting against gender inequality.
Hi, I'm Conan O'Brien. And if you really thought Andy was going to spend the afternoon on activism instead of taking his usual nap, then you just showed implicit bias.
So I think that was a pretty good introduction to cognitive biases and how these can hold us back and play troubles on our mind. Basically, there is an estimated 180 cognitive biases. So there's a long list here actually to go through here, but I'll take some of the main ones here in this part of the course. And if we start with what are cognitive biases, they're basically mind errors or errors in judgment. And that's because we can't really trust our mind. As you can see in this image here, we could ask you which one is longer. Because we're asking that question, our eyes will go to what looks longer. But actually, if we're saying which line is longer, you can now see how the mind is being tricked here. And this is really the underlying problem, is that we can't really trust our mind. That is the problem with cognitive biases or unconscious biases, is that we're not really aware that we have these biases, and therefore they're playing tricks on our mind, and that causes error in judgment. And obviously we want to achieve to have, the best kind of judgment in all areas, everything we do. So these are some errors that we really need to understand in order to find ways to eliminate these errors, so we can have better, stronger, and clearer judgment. That's really the goal. Here's another one. What do you see here? Do you see an old woman or a young woman? You might be able to see both, or you might only be able to see one of them. But again, this is really kind of comes down to how our mind sees things, what we focus on, and then that focus then becomes our judgment, whether this is an old woman or whether it's a young woman. Or you might be able to switch back and forth and see both the young woman turning away like this and the old woman. If you can see both, I think that's a good start, because that kind of shows you that, hey, there's two ways to see these images. This image, there's really there are two different perspectives, and perspectives is really what critical thinking is all about. It's about evaluating different perspectives and then figuring out which one is the best conclusion here, the best judgment you can take in this case. And here, if your judgment is there's a young woman and an old woman, then that's exactly what's there. That's what it's meant to project. Also, here's another one. You've all heard everybody's on their phone these days. Everybody's on social media all the time, and everybody's so antisocial. I mean, that's probably an older person could say that. I'm online myself, but I could say it myself. But this is the thing you hear. But look, here we have a photo of probably about 80 or 100 years ago. Everybody else was occupied as well. So again, our mind plays games with us. And that's what it's really about. It's really about critical thinking. Is about understanding these mind games, these mind errors, and correcting them, and therefore we achieve better judgment. That's really the goal of it. So here we have it. Confirmation bias, which is one of the most regular bias. It's a very common bias. It really shows you here that really we have the facts, and then we have your own opinion and beliefs, and then somewhere in the middle, this is where you judge. This is where your conclusion will come down. Basically, what you see is somewhere between your belief and the objective facts. So basically, your beliefs are your subjective mind, your subjective opinions and views, and this includes your biases. And then on the other hand, we have the objective facts. And somewhere in between these two that's really where usually most people, their judgment falls in the middle of those, right? And that's the problem, because obviously we want to move away. If we want to think critically and if we want to be objective, we really want to move away from our subjective opinions, away from our subjective mind, and more towards the facts, the actual facts, and that would be the objective understanding of what's going on, because that's really where we get closer to more correct judgment and what people would say is truth. We get closer to the truth that way, and that is going to help everything we do in our lives. So this is why it's really important. So here, confirmation bias. So as I said, it's one of the most common biases. It's basically, as it says, we are trying to confirm what we already believe. So basically, we're looking for information. We're seeking out information that confirms what we already believe. But of course, that way we don't learn anything new, and that way we're also not able to look at the facts or the objective reality, because we already have a subjective belief, and by looking for anything that can confirm that belief, we're, oh yeah, see, I'm right. Yeah, I knew I was right. Right? I mean, who of us haven't said that? I knew I was right? But that's really a problem when we talk about critical thinking, and it's a problem in overcoming biases, because we need to be open-minded, we need to be objective and look at all the information out there. Because what confirmation bias also does is that we will look for things that confirm our belief, but we will also filter out. We will say, oh no, that can't be true, or I don't like that information, or I don't believe that. Anything that goes against our belief. And that's, I mean, if you know anybody that believes in, anybody has a strong political opinion, or anybody who's got a strong religious opinion, that's exactly what confirmation bias is, right? That is really the essence of it. And we all know how emotional and how passionate that can be. So here's another example. This is a little bit of a funny one, why guys don't text girls back. I put that in, I like to be a little bit funny, like the beginning of this video. I like to put a little bit of jokes in there. But basically, this is actually also a kind of, you could say, a serious form of confirmation bias, because this can happen in not just relationships, not just with girls and boys, but also, a friend. Why does this friend not text us back? But it can also happen in business. Why does this lead, the sales opportunity, not reply to my email? Is it because they're not interested? Is it because they're busy? What is the reason? You can wonder about this, right? But if we make a really fast conclusion about it, then this is confirmation bias, right? And a lot of people will do that if they have, let's say, low self-esteem, as in the photo here. You'll think, oh, the guy doesn't like me, or in a business relation, this would be that client isn't interested, that lead isn't interested in what I have to offer. But it could just be that, the guy's busy, or it could be that the client, the lead, is busy as well. And maybe if you send a second email, and you get them at the right time, then you get the response, right? So this is really what confirmation bias can be as well. But also, it's also, as I mentioned, it's also politically. You will see people that watch CNN, of course, they will be against anybody who watches Fox News, and the other way around, right? It's really, confirmation bias is really, if you're watching one of the channels, or if you politically are left-leaning, if you're for the Democrats, then you're gonna obviously you're gonna look at all the information that confirms that Biden is doing great, the Democrats are doing great. You're gonna just eat that out raw, right? Without critical thinking. And then anything that's negative, of course, about the other side, you're gonna just lash on to that as well. Say, yeah, they're so bad. No, the other side's like this, the other side's like that, right? And that's really another example of confirmation bias. And that's probably an example that we're all guilty of. I mean, I even, I like to think critically as much as I can, but we all do fall into things that we do like to believe. So confirmation bias is really, it's really a very common thing that we're all engaged in. We're all guilty of confirmation bias, pretty much. Nobody's that good and perfect. They can stay clear of it all the time. And also, we can also see why this becomes a problem, confirmation bias. Here we have support for the invasion of Iraq. Obviously, when it happened, and we were seeing all this powder and weapons of mass destruction and all these hooks out there to make us support the war, right? So we had a very large, we had 63% in favor. And then obviously, if you look at what's happened since that, this is basically another study where the support has pretty much close to cut in half. Went from 63% to 38% in 2015 because now we had time to think about it and actually look at the real evidence. There were no weapons of mass destruction there. And now we can kind of see how we've all been fooled, right? But the quick conclusion is what confirmation bias is. And the consequences of it is not just whether it's a relationship or a work email, it can actually also be big disaster for the world, such as the Iraq war, which caused a lot of problems globally, immigration from Syria, everything spilled over. It's just a very bad decision. So we have to be very careful. We have to think critically about all conclusions that we make in order not to fall into something like this. Also here I have another example. This is, so now I'm getting a little bit more personal. It's some of my personal experience because now I want to talk about how cognitive biases can hold you back in your life. So this is really, I'm assuming you're on this course because you want to achieve something in your life. You want to be better at critical thinking. You want to maybe use that in your education or in your career or maybe in doing business. You definitely want to get somewhere, and that's what critical thinking can help you do. So basically, this is just a funny little example. I just couldn't help, bringing it up because this is exactly what confirmation bias is. And this is really how confirmation bias can hold you back in your life. So basically, I sent out a tweet. Basically, the tweet was kind of just to make people think, let's think about critical thinking. But it was, you cannot be free till you stop letting others do your thinking for you. So critical thinking is the path to thinking independently, as you will learn to free yourself from your subjective mind and see through views imprinted on you by others. And so here, John, I put him up, John, here, because I just had a funny back and forth with him. He was obviously very, very funny, very clever here, So he's basically saying that, I'm saying don't listen to anybody, and then he's telling me that, but yet I should listen to you, right? Pass. Fair enough, and I get it. But really, that's not the point of critical thinking. Critical thinking is not about me telling you what to think. It's about me telling you how to think. It's basically a tool where you're going to think for yourself. I'm not going to put stuff in there into your mind. You're going to be able to have stuff in there and take stuff in there and then critically evaluate what is good information, what is bad information. So it's got nothing to do with me putting information in your head and me controlling you. It's all about how you think by yourself, for yourself. That's really what it is. And then, of course, I was interested in a guy. We had a back and forth, and I was a little bit of, I just wanted to see, who is this guy, right? I mean, it's a funny pushback, right? But so who is John here? And I basically went on his tweet. I went on his account. And first thing, dirty, no good, drunk, fine, 19 followers. Okay, here we go. Here's really who's talking, right? But then I also noticed we have a photo here of Elon Musk, and I know Elon Musk is a person that I refer to because I think he's been very successful. He's done big things, and he keeps doing on big things. But basically, Jeffrey Epstein's, who do we have here? Maxine, right? So Elon Musk is hanging out with her, and that means he's dirty and buying, all this human smuggling and all this stuff that's going out there that we'll hear about. Some of it is true. But, there's probably also a little bit of conspiracy theories mixed in there. But obviously, John has already figured out that everybody's corrupt. Everybody who's successful have money, including Elon Musk. I mean, we have no evidence, right? You're supposed to be, innocent till proven guilty. But here, Elon Musk, he's actually guilty by association. And John has already figured out that that's how the world works. And that's why, he's a no-good drunk with 19 followers. So he's already created his own destiny here. And that's really what I want to bring about here is really that how these biases can hold you back in your life. And that's why you want to overcome the biases, because you want to get ahead, right? This is really the point, right? Unless you want to be stuck, then there's only one way to get ahead, and that is really to overcome these biases, analyze them, see through them. And once you can do that, then you can change your thinking in a positive way. And that positive change in your thinking can bring a positive change in your life. That's really the point of everything I want to pass on, everything I want to teach through this course and everything else I do. It's really about giving the information that's going to create change in your life, and that can then create the positive change in everything you do. That's really what it's all about. So, negative bias, let's go to that. We just had confirmation bias, but now let's talk about negative bias, because I think this is really what we saw here from John. And it really, negative bias can be in many forms. It can be in the form of pessimism, it can be cynicism, it can be in the form of victimhood, feeling I'm a victim, right? I mean, the rich are corrupt and the world is against me, and therefore, I might as well give up. And that leads into defeatism, which is another negative bias. And it's really, it's very understandable why we have negative biases, because they all really kind of stem from our kind of, what could you say, very primal fear of survival. I mean, we used to live in the caves and there were big animals out there outside the cave running around. So yeah, we should be, we should be suspicious, and we should be aware that something bad can happen to us, right? But I think today, we live in a totally different world. There's still many challenges in the world, but there's also really, a lot of positive things happening, and you can actually create positive things in your life by being a little bit more positive, right? But of course, negative bias is also a little bit deeper than that. It also relates to past traumas, like childhood traumas and experiences, and these are some psychological issues that also, you could say, interfere with the way we think in our thinking, and therefore create some negative biases as well. But ever the more, this is the reason why we need to take hold of this. We need to become aware. We need to be able to analyze and be aware of these biases, so we can become more positive and therefore create a better life for ourselves and in our future. This was my point about John. Obviously, eat the rich. All the rich are evil and bad, and therefore the world is unfair, and therefore I'm just going to be a no-good drunk and give up. But no, you have a choice. Get in the game and let's do something about it and create the success you want. Create what you want in your life. You have that choice, right? But also, biases or negative biases are also obviously very, 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 very preliminary in our relationships. You have negative bias. You might have jealousy. You might have somebody didn't call you back, or this person didn't show up for my birthday, or there might just be really a list of things. And it's really something that we need to think about, because critical thinking and understanding our cognitive biases, it's not only about gaining success or financial success, which of course is a very important thing, but it's also about happiness, creating happiness in our lives. And that's really about having good relationships. It's really about having good, healthy relationships. And obviously, if we have a lot of negativity, if we're a really negative person with a lot of negativity and a lot of negative biases, that's going to create some problems in our relationships. We might have less relationships, less fruitful relationships, less happy relationships than what we really need. Because let's face it, relationships are really a fundamental human, need that we have. I mean, we all saw that under COVID. Here where I am, we were in lockdown. We were forced to stay inside our apartments. And, we need that social aspect. That's really part of who we are. And that's a very important thing to have. So critical thinking, understanding our biases and understanding why we have some negative biases. Once we really become aware of that, we can also create more successful relationships, both in our friendships and in our colleagues or teams at work and everything, but also in romantic relationships. So that's why this is a really important topic. It's a very important thing. Critical thinking is something that goes through everything you do in your life. That's why I brought this topic up. That's why I'm teaching it, because I really believe that this is really one of the most important things in our lives. So here, again, attribution bias. This is another form of bias. It's also in the negative bias realm. It's called attribution bias because we are attributing things that are negative to other people, right? And this is so it really comes down to how we judge others. Here we have an example. Ben doesn't like Anna because she's this and that, right? He's going to find something negative. This is at work, right? And then obviously Anna probably feels the negative energy. Once we feel negative energy from somebody else, then we're going to attribute something negative to them as well, right? So here starts the whole cycle, right? It's really we are projecting. Attribution is the same as projecting negativity and negative things on other people, and then obviously the relationship is going to be negative because it's that's what we're projecting, right? So being aware of this and how we do that and how we can do this to others is very important as well, right? So here's a little bit of list of attribution bias, what it means, what we do. It means we have a little bit of overinflated ego, that everything we do is right and everything that the other person that they do is wrong, right? It can also be the obsession that we want approval all the time. Also at work, we could be taking credit for something that somebody else did. Maybe somebody else or the team did it and then somebody tries to take credit for it. We probably know that. There can be a lack of accountability. and the tendency to blame others, and also the inability to take criticism. This is something, as a business owner with staff, this is something I see all the time, because a lot of times criticism can actually be positive, but constructive criticism, right? But a lot of people just can't handle criticism at all. They get very defensive, very sensitive, which is the word today, right? And it's also the inability to recognize failure. But these are all important things. If you want to be critical in your thinking, if you want to be successful in your job, in your career, or in your business, these are some things that you actually need to be aware of in order to see through them and get to something that's better than this. I have my own story here. So I invested in crypto quite a lot, and lost money the first time, long story, but then I had some powder dry and I was ready to buy the dip, which happened just about in mid-February, end of February, where the Bitcoin was down to about under 16,000. And at that point, I put in some dry powder and I bought a lot of Bitcoin, and I was praising myself that, oh my God, I'm such a genius, right? I just saw the dip in the market. I read the market. I did really good. Then a month later, the price dropped drastically again. I started selling because, hey, what the hell is happening? This is not what I thought. And then, of course, now it's not my fault, because before I was a genius, but now it's the fault of the market. What is the Fed doing? They keep increasing the rates. What the hell did they do? Why would they destroy the economy? What is going on with the world? It's everybody else's fault. Now I'm no longer the genius, but now it's the Fed's fault, right? So this is another example. And also we have something called the actor-observer bias or effect. It's really the way we attribute. It's again about projecting. We project a behavior onto others. So for instance, one example here is really, if you had a bad day at work, then you will say that maybe, you will apologize for it. You'll excuse yourself, saying that, hey, I didn't have enough sleep, or something went wrong, I was late. You'll find an excuse to say why you had a bad day at work. But let's say your boss had a bad day, and let's say he said something bad, or he snapped with somebody, whatever, right? What are you going to do then? You're not going to use the same excuse that maybe he didn't. You're going to go straight to the fact, this is bad. This is a bad boss, and this is a bad management here, and I can't believe he would do that, and everything. So this is really the actor and the observer, right? So when you're the actor, then you're going to find an excuse. When you're the observer, observing your boss, then you're not going to excuse your boss. You're going to say, this is a bad boss, right? And this bias is really a problem in how your relationship develop, because obviously if you start seeing your boss in a negative light, then your relationship very likely will turn negative with your boss, and that's going to affect your career. That's going to affect your future. So understanding this bias is very important as well. So here again, the actor-observer bias I want to go a little bit deeper into, because it's a very important bias to understand, because it's going to affect you, not only your relationship, because obviously if in your relationship, your girlfriend, you can do this, but your girlfriend can't, right? She's going to say, hey, if you can do it, why can't I? But also at work, which is really where you are, or in business, managing others, this is really an important bias to look at. And I actually hear one. I actually have a very good story myself that I think is very relevant here. Explain the bias, which was, I had a former marketing intern that I had at my business, and we were going to create an event, bring all the customers in and have a nice event, and then kind of build some relationship with some of the customers, bring them in, get them in touch with the business. And what happened on the day of the event was that only 4 people showed up. She was organizing everything. She had sent out the invites. She had done everything, right? And on the day of the event, everybody's getting ready. 4 people show up. So my manager asked her, hey, so what happened? Why do we only have 4 people? And straight after that, she comes running in. So my marketing intern, in her early 20s, comes running into my office and says, I want to file a complaint. I have been harassed by the manager. She has harassed me, and this is a human rights violation. I want to file a complaint. And she was totally emotional over this thing. And I was like, okay, this sounds very serious. Please tell me what happened. And she basically tells me that, my manager was criticizing her work because she asked why we only had 4 people showing up. And that was a human rights violation. And I was like, I know a little bit about human rights, but I'm pretty sure that does not qualify as a human rights violation. And I try to calm her down and explain that, hey, we do need a little bit of a critical feedback about what happened here, because we spent a lot of money on the time and money on this event, and then it was basically unsuccessful because only 4 people showed up, right? So this is a real story about how this person who is the actor in this situation is not able to take criticism, because obviously when you're the actor, when you're having a bad day at work, you didn't sleep or whatever, you're tired at work, then as the actor you're going to excuse yourself and say, oh, it's because this, it's because that. But then when you're the observer, right? So my manager here is now the observer and saying, hello, what's going on here? We were hoping for a little bit more people than 4 people showing up, right? So can you please give me an explanation, right? So this is another way to explain what the actor-observer bias does. Then there's something called the interpretation bias. That's how you interpret things. So I don't know if Elizabeth here is the author of that bias, but here again I'd like to use a personal story, really, that I have a bricks and mortar business among other businesses. That's part of a franchise, and that franchise, it's a furniture franchise that's very old. It was a family-run business for almost 70 years, stayed within the family, and the culture was very family-oriented. It was really a great culture. But just about the time I had bought it, taken it over, the culture started changing, because the family-run business got sold to a large investment firm. And basically it's a British investment firm. Basically what this investment firm do, they buy businesses for cheap and then they flip them at a profit, right? So this is really all about shareholder profit, right? And obviously from a family-run business changing into a business run by shareholder profit is a cultural change. And they started doing a lot of changes that were very aggressive. If you don't do this, there's going to be penalties. It was very aggressive. And I was very, hey, whoa. I didn't sign up for this corporate greed, this is really kind of aggressive culture, right? So I started pushing back, and I see myself now, whenever this large investment firm, whenever the board comes down with something new to do, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna let these corporate, assholes treat me that way, right? But I'm also now catching myself, because if I have to think critically about what's happening, are some of these changes good? Because I do have to say, obviously, it's a retail business. Furniture is retail. It's very competitive. If you don't keep up with changes, if you don't keep up with competition, then you're going to lag behind. Then you're going to go out of business, right? So now I'm also starting to apply critical thinking to my interpretation bias, which is here negative. Everything the head office does is negative. But now I'm starting to say, hey, but is there some of this that makes sense? Again, critical thinking. Are there some of these new attempts to create new directions in the business and to grow the business? Are there some of these things that actually make sense and that I shouldn't be pushing back on? That I should actually say, hey man, that's actually quite a good idea. I'm going to go along with this one. And of course there is. These guys have hired some of the top people internationally from other large furniture international corporations that know a little bit about what they're doing, and slowly, by being more critical in my thinking about it, being open-minded to what these ideas are, I'm now slowly getting to learn that, hey, this is not all bad. I might have my bias. I don't like a big corporation telling me what to do, because I like to be independent. But some of these things are actually making sense. These guys have actually done the research. They've studied the market. Where are we going? What's the future in the furniture market? And some of these suggestions are actually pretty good. And so here, this is really what it is again. Becoming aware of your own biases and then opening your mind. This is really critical thinking. That's how you overcome biases, like in my story just right here. And also here now I want to use this is one of my favorite stories of biases, overcome biases, because it contains, it's again myself as an example. I like to use these practical examples, but this was really a big lesson for me. This is really one that I will I will not forget for years and years. Basically what happened was, this is at my furniture business, my retail business. We have a little, you can see the envelope here, it's red. We have a little envelope that we use for kind of petty cash for, expensive, buying coffee, buying milk, the window washer and stuff like that. And money had been, missing from this bag for about 6 to 8 months. And I haven't really thought that much, because it was, $50 here, it was $100 there. I hadn't really thought about it, but I slowly came to figure, hey, there's something going on here. The money is missing. My manager would keep saying, hey, did you fill up the cash, the petty cash, because we seem to be out. I said, well, I just did it 2 weeks ago. How can it already be empty again? So anyway, so what happens is that we decide to buy we have Mac computers that are desktop computers in the business, but we decide to buy a laptop so you can kind of go around the store with the customers with the laptop. And when my manager suggested, I was a little bit like, okay, yeah, it's a good idea, but it's probably going to get stolen, right? Anyway, so we decided to buy it, and 10 days after we bought the laptop, it was gone, right? I had probably suspected because I knew something was going on already. But anyway, and my manager was like, hey, we just bought it. I can't believe this is happening. And it was really, she was basically crying almost because I told her, hey, it's going to get stolen. And of course I was right. But of course the problem here was that I now realized that within my team, 4 salespeople, within a small team of 4 people, I had somebody that was a thief, that was stealing. And a laptop, a MacBook Pro, what's that? It's about $2,000. I mean, now it's no longer $50 or $100 missing. Now it's actually something serious. So I decided to, actually the first thing that happened was that my manager said, well, I know who stole it. And of course it was my warehouse manager because he had done a few dodgy things before. We knew maybe a little bit about him, smoking some weed. He had... there was a problem with a couple of customers. We knew there was a little bit of a dodgy thing going on. So my manager had actually, she said, I know who it is. It's got to be the warehouse manager. It's got to be him, right? Because he already had done something bad in the past, and therefore, he would have to be the thief, right? But I so then have to be honest. I think if you're gonna accuse somebody of stealing, it's pretty serious, right? So I thought, hey man, this is a little bit more of a serious matter. I don't want to just jump into the conclusion that this is my warehouse manager, no matter what he's done in the past. I actually want to know who did this, because I actually really want to know who, within a very small group of people, like 6 people, who is actually stealing, right? Right in front of our faces here, because it's really also about trust. It's about going forth and everything. So what I did is, what you can see here is actually I put up a hidden camera behind a speaker in my office, right? That's where the petty cash was missing. And I installed it on a day where it was only me and my manager. Obviously, I did not suspect my manager, but I installed it on a day that it was only me and my manager, so nobody knew the secret camera, the hidden camera, was being installed, and it's illegal in Canada, by the way, or it's legal in Canada to install it. And then I put the petty cash out, I filled it with some money, and I put the envelope actually up on the disk as if I had forgotten it. And then I just waited. So every day at work, I would see if the money was still there, because I was basically waiting for somebody. I put a bait. Yes, I put a bait. That's exactly what I did, but because I wanted to know now who was stealing. So what happened was, about 2 weeks later, the money went missing. And great, I was like, hey, so somebody, we caught the fish, right? So somebody actually went to steal the money, and now it's just a question of going back into the video recording and see who was actually the person stealing within my small team. And big surprise, here we go. So this was really, the person was one of my salespeople that actually came from a rich family with a lot of money, and I was totally in shock. All right, I could not believe it was him, because this person did not need money. So why does somebody that doesn't need money, that's from a rich family, rich background, why does somebody steal that doesn't need money, right? For me, that was like, I mean, it would have to be my warehouse manager, right? So here I actually had the proof. You can see the proof right now. I'm not going to say the name of this person, but this was one of my staff. But I was in shock. I would never suspect this person, because this person does not need to steal, right? So what we have is here, if you look at some of the biases in this concrete example, I actually have what's first called the halo effect. So the halo effect is, I like my manager, so therefore I tend to agree with everything she thinks, because she's a great a manager. She does a really good job, and I like her also as a person. And therefore, the halo, this glow goes on to her, and therefore I'll just eat up raw whatever she says, right? And then of course she tells me it's got to be the warehouse manager. So this is what we call the horns effect, because my warehouse manager, he's done bad things in the past. We know of that. We know of a few things. We had some customer complaints. There was a basketball net that went missing from a driveway of a customer, and that actually got caught on video. He argued that he thought it was dumped as garbage, but the actual customer said, hey, this guy stole our child's basketball net. So I had the previous evidence that this person had done bad things before, and therefore this person had horns, right? He was a bad person. The warehouse manager was a bad person, and therefore, well, why wouldn't he also be doing the stealing, right? And then on top of that, we also went through some video where confirmation bias comes in, where we saw some of the video from the last time that the warehouse manager was in the store, and we saw he had a briefcase with him. And my manager was very sure, she was pretty sure that she could see the laptop in the briefcase. I was looking at the video and I was like, I'm not sure. I mean, it looks a little bit fat, the briefcase, but is there a laptop in there? I mean, I can't be 100% sure, right? So that's why I installed the video, in order to be 100% sure, because again, accusing somebody of stealing is a very serious matter, right? And then again, affinity bias, which is really what it comes down to. Who was the perpetrator? That was somebody from a, it's not about color, white or whatever, but it was somebody from a rich background, where I suspected the store manager, or maybe the cleaning lady, like somebody a little bit more removed, but I didn't suspect one of the people actually working in the store on the floor with me every day, and especially not this person, because he came from a very wealthy background, right? And so this was really, you could say, total shock, total surprise. But actually, I think the real story, what I found out after, is really that the person that did the stealing at my business, that stole, might have had, I don't know if you've seen some of the celebrities in Hollywood that go stealing something at shop. It's almost like kleptomania, what's it called, right? It's like a fetish or something. Somebody's bored in their life, and they like, some people like stimulation this way, extreme sports. Some people like sexual stimulation. Some people like, danger stimulation in stealing, right? So that's very likely what happened in this case, right? Which was totally to my surprise. And then again, using critical thinking, I also have to, as I write here as the last point, I also have to be open to the fact that maybe this person didn't steal the laptop. Because I caught the person on video stealing the cash, but I didn't actually catch the person stealing the laptop, which means, hypothetically, and if I have to really be open-minded and think critically, then it's also likely that somebody else stole the laptop, and this person only got caught stealing the cash, and somebody else stole the laptop. That is a possibility that I have to be open to as well. And so, here you really have a concrete, real-life example of how biases work and how it can impact your life and your judgment in everything you do. And obviously, the reason I bring up this example and try to explain it to you and show you everything is really because accusing a false person of something, somebody innocent, that is a really pretty serious matter. I mean, imagine some of the people that have been on death row and become, executed and lifetime imprisonment for something they haven't done. We've seen a lot of these cases in the criminal system after DNA evidence was introduced, right? All of a sudden you could say if they did it or not, right? So as technology advances here, we're now able to see that there are a lot of biases in our criminal justice system, especially in the US, but also all over the world. And these biases are just one example of how it can impact the lives of others, especially if they are innocent. And that's really why we need to look at biases. We need to understand our biases, and we need to be more clever in overcoming them, because it's really about overcoming our errors in judgment. And here I'll just finish with a funny little photo here, because obviously I talked a lot about negative biases and some of the negative effects, but we can also have what's called positivity or optimism bias here. Obviously, low bridge, you can do it. I'm a big fan of yes, just do it. But again, biases go both ways. It's really about, am I being too optimistic? Am I being too pessimistic, too negative? It's really about trying to understand how we do these biases, right? And here again, just to wrap up here, this is now the conclusion of this part of the course, which is really that we have 180 biases estimated. And really the best way to overcome these biases, I've just shown you real life example, practical examples of cognitive biases and how they can impact our lives, our relationships, our work, and how we judge and see others. And this is really, my message here is really, the reason critical thinking is important is because it teaches you to identify and overcome your biases. And it's very, very important. And it's going to increase the success in your life from all areas, financial success to relationships. And it's really something I think we need more of in the world. So I encourage you to learn more, continue in this course, or if this is the first time you engage with me, if this is a free mini course, then go on to one of my other courses or take my critical thinking course in order to take this topic seriously, because I really think it deserves much more attention than what we have out there today. The world needs critical thinking. So please join me and let's discover and learn more about this topic together. Thank you.